All right, let's talk about the one voice you can never, ever escape. Yeah, the one inside your own head. For a lot of us, that relationship feels like a constant battle, right? But what if it didn't have to be? In this explainer, we're going to dive into a really simple, but honestly profound shift, moving from fighting our thoughts to just watching them. Seriously, just pause for a second and listen. There's a voice in there right now, isn't there? Kind of commenting, maybe worrying, planning something. Yep, that internal narrator is always on. But here's the big idea we're going to unpack. What if the problem isn't the voice itself? What if the real problem is that we're constantly arguing with it? Okay, so let's get right into it. To really understand the solution, we first have to get a super clear picture of this relentless narrator. You know, Buddhist philosophy has this brilliant term for it, the monkey mind. It's such a perfect image, right? That part of you that's always swinging from one branch of thought to the next. And what's really fascinating is that modern neuroscience has actually found its physical counterpart. It's called the default mode network. This is basically your brain's idle mode. Its job is to think about, well, us, past mistakes, future worries, the whole shebang. It's really a survival mechanism. But the problem is, in our modern world, it can get stuck in this endless loop of anxiety. And this is the absolute key takeaway. The problem isn't the monkey mind itself. It's not the chatter. The real problem is how we react to that chatter. This is what we call the judgment trap. I mean, if you break it down, a thought is really just a biological process. It's just a little firing of synapses, a tiny flash of electricity in your brain. That's it. It's neutral, it's harmless, it's just data. But this is the critical moment where everything goes wrong. The suffering doesn't come from that initial flash of a thought. Nope, it comes from our second reaction to it. It's that moment we slap a label on that totally neutral event. That's bad, that's wrong, I shouldn't be thinking that. And that is the exact moment a harmless little spark turns into a painful fire of guilt or anxiety. Okay, let's really break this down. On the one hand, you have an anxious thought. All by itself, it's just a fleeting mental event, right? It's like a cloud passing in the sky. But now, look what happens when we add judgment to it. That little voice pipes up and says, ugh, I shouldn't feel this way. What's wrong with me? Bam. Suddenly, you're trapped. You've just created a vicious cycle where you're not just anxious anymore. You're now anxious about being anxious. You've literally started a war with yourself. This actually brings up the famous white bear problem in psychology. It's a great illustration of this. So if I tell you, whatever you do, do not think of a white bear, what's the first thing you think of? Exactly. When you actively try not to think of something, your brain has to keep checking in to see if you're thinking about it, which, of course, makes you think about it even more. Judgment and resistance, they're like fuel for these thoughts. They don't push them away, they pretty much glue them in place. So, if fighting our thoughts is basically a losing battle, what's the alternative? Well, the answer isn't trying to control them. It's about changing our relationship to them. It's this pretty radical shift in perspective. It's about becoming the silent watcher. This quote from Eckhart Tolle just nails it. The goal is to have this realization that you are not the thinker. You're not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears the voice. That simple shift, that disidentification, is the beginning of freedom from the mind's, well, it's tyranny. In the world of therapy, this practice actually has a name. It's called cognitive diffusion. And it's all about this subtle but incredibly profound shift in language. So instead of fusing with a thought and saying, I am anxious, you create distance. You diffuse from it by saying, I am noticing a feeling of anxiety. See that? With just one little word, you've turned a defining truth about yourself into a temporary observation, and that just drains it of its power. Okay, I know this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do it, like in real life? Well, let's look at a couple of really powerful mental models that can help. This first one is one of the most effective metaphors out there. Just imagine for a second that your awareness, your true self, is the vast, open sky. Now your thoughts, your feelings, all those sensations, they're just weather patterns passing through. Some days you get dark storm clouds, other days it's bright and sunny. But here's the thing. The sky is never harmed or stained by the weather, right? It just provides the space for it all to happen. You are the sky, not the clouds. All right, here's another great one. Picture yourself sitting peacefully on a riverbank, and each thought that pops into your head is a leaf floating down the stream. Now, the untrained mind, its habit is to jump right into the river and start frantically chasing after the leaves. But the practice? It's just to stay on the bank. Watch a leaf appear, watch it float by, and watch it disappear around the bend. You don't have to do a single thing about it. So, what happens when we actually start to practice this consistently? What's the payoff? Well, it's pretty profound. Let's dig into the real benefits of cultivating this kind of non-judgmental awareness. Well, for one, when you stop throwing fuel on the fire of negative thoughts, your stress and anxiety just naturally start to go down. You get way better at regulating your emotions because you start to see them as just passing states, not these absolute truths about who you are. And a big one, you develop this deep self-compassion. You start replacing that harsh inner critic with a much kinder, more understanding observer. All that energy you used to waste fighting yourself, that gets freed up, which leads to better focus. And maybe most importantly, you start to connect with that calm, stable part of you that's been there all along, just buried underneath all the noise. Now, we have to be realistic here. This stuff is simple, but that does not mean it's easy. Your mind has been in the habit of judging for decades, and that habit is strong. So what do you do when you inevitably get lost in thought and then start judging yourself for getting lost in thought? This right here, this is the real masterstroke of the whole practice. When that voice pops up and says, "Ugh, you're so bad at this, you're too distracted," you don't fight it, you don't believe it, you just apply the exact same technique. You see that thought of judgment as just another cloud in the sky or just another leaf on the river. You give it space to be there, and guess what? It'll pass. So the process itself is beautifully simple. Step 1, you just notice you've been hooked by a critical thought. Step 2, you gently and without any drama just label it. There's a thought about judgment. And step 3, you gently bring your attention back to just being the observer, back to watching the sky or sitting on that riverbank. And here's the thing, every single time you do this, you are strengthening that mindfulness muscle. And that leaves us with a final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. The voice in your head isn't you. It's just something you experience. By learning to watch it without judgment, you're not trying to get rid of it, you're just discovering the vast, peaceful awareness that's been hiding behind it all along. So the real question is, who are you, really, when you stop believing every single thought that pops into your head? That's something worth finding out.